Now, Josh, you said you saw these mechanisms playing everywhere. Was there a time that you realized that this is a mechanism? It's not just one or two places that you've seen, it's everywhere.
You know, in New York City, my job as an investigative journalist began in 2008. So I've been with Epoch Times since 2006, but you know, I was doing light, happy, fun articles, and then my whole life changed. 2008, I was an intern in New York City. You know, I'm from San Diego originally, but went there for an internship. And I accidentally uncovered the United Front. And the way that happened was, it was right when the Beijing Olympics were taking place. The CCP had just started China Daily. They were just starting to do their newspaper inserts in most American news outlets. They were putting paid inserts in Wall Street Journal, New York Times, I mean, all of them. What happened alongside that whole information campaign, where the CCP was like, you know, threatening news, they were threatening Bloomberg, threatening most of the broadcast media about reporting on what's happening in China, especially with like protests against the CCP, like, you know, Tibetans were protesting them. They were silencing all of that. And once they brought most of the mainstream media to heel, which they did, and a lot of media even publicly declared, you know, we're not going to report on some stuff now because, you know, they wanted to keep their business in China. And that was plain on the surface back then, that a lot of them admitted it. They also had to silence overseas criticism. And so what the CCP did was, it kind of, the glove came off and you could see the hand for a little bit. And the way that looked was this, because, you know, they normally try to conceal it. When the CCP,
it's usually hidden. You don't know this is happening, and
they usually keep it hidden. The mask came off very briefly. And during that time was when I was reporting on some of this stuff. So when the mask fell off, you know, I was there on the ground to you know, expose it basically. And as a very new journalist, it was a very, very rough time of my life, to be honest. But so in New York City, the way it looked was this: there were mass protests, violent protests taking place in the Chinese communities. And from the outside, that's how it looked. Like, you know, most of the media was basically writing it saying, oh, people in the Chinese community are attacking each other. There's violence. People are, you know, fighting over basically the Beijing Olympics. And that was the most of the narrative you get in most media. What was really happening was this: you had human rights activists, pro-democracy activists, Tibetan Buddhists, Falun Gong practitioners, and house Christians. And, you know, they were criticizing the Chinese Communist Party and the fact that the Olympics were going to be held in China. They were saying, hey, these are the bloody Olympics. Why are we letting the CCP, you know, why are you powdering the face of the CCP when it's abusing people like this? And a lot of people were trying to expose the types of abuses taking place in China when all the cameras were on China. The CCP did not want that. And so after silencing most of the media, they mobilized hundreds of people to go out and beat, threaten, just bring to heel all the dissidents who were speaking out. And it was shocking to see. I mean, I remember I was reporting in Flushing, Queens in New York, which is one of the bigger Chinese communities. It's it's like the new Chinatown. And you had people just, like, I'm not even exaggerating, hundreds, punching people, tearing people's banners, spitting on people. They were threatening to kill people. And I mean, it was really jarring. And the police weren't doing anything about it.
And they were on behalf of the Chinese Communist Party, they were doing that.
They were. And so that came out gradually. So the way myself and Epoch Times overall exposed that the Chinese Communist Party was involved with it is actually some people actually called and got them to admit it. They actually made phone calls in Chinese to some of the front organizations, and they admitted it during recorded phone calls. But we also got the former Consulate General Peng Ke-yu to admit it. Peng Ke-yu actually personally met with the individuals who were attacking people on the streets. Many of the people they were attacking were Falun Gong practitioners, you know, which is a Chinese meditation practice based in truthfulness, compassion, tolerance. Basically trying to be good people And the CCP is killing them for it because the CCP says that their values go against the atheistic, concepts of the CCP. They say that they're a threat to the atheistic system of the Chinese Communist Party. So how dare you try to be honest and preach kindness, right? And so, of course, when they start persecuting them, and then when persecuted people start saying, hey, I'm being persecuted, they say you're being political for saying you're being persecuted.
Even in the U.S., right?
Even in the U.S. And so that's what people are doing. They say, hey, we're being persecuted. You're giving them the Olympics. They're harvesting people's organs while they're still alive, and you want to give them the Olympics? And the CCP says, well, how dare you be political for talking about this? And they punish them. The media is silent on it. I found out that the police advisory board was actually run by the Chinese front groups. And so the police advisory board for representing, the Chinese community, meaning the United Front, they were being run by the Tongs.
In
Flushing.
Because it's all Chinese anyways, right? So
yeah.
It makes sense for the police advisory board to be all Chinese, right?
It was.
But then they are connected to the Communist Party. Is that
it was like the mafia running the anti-crime campaign. It's like if you have a drug problem and the drug cartels are running the anti-drug campaign. Like that's what that basically was. You have the CCP organizing mass violence against dissidents on American soil, and then the CCP front groups are doing the front-facing operations, telling the police, don't worry about it, let us handle it. This is just an issue. This is just a Chinese cultural issue, and you don't understand it. And so these groups, they work as like the front. They're the community leaders.
They're like the organizations that represent Chinese Americans, and they're kind of controlled by the CCP.
A lot of them are, and so what the CCP tries to do is gain control of those organizations. That's one of the main focuses of the United Front, is to get all these front-facing Chinese organizations to serve the Chinese Communist Party. And they get a lot of them because it's all the Chinese business. If you want to do business in China, you got to play the game. If you don't play the game, you don't do business in China. If you don't play the game, you lose business opportunities with every other organization in the Chinese community that's tied in with it. So if you're, and these are really insulated, immigrant communities. They don't really operate outside the Chinese community. So if you want to get in the local newspapers, other than the Epoch Times, if you want to get in the local newspapers, if you want to get the advertisements, if you want to do business with this import-export company, if you want to do any of that, if you're outside the system, the entire thing cannot associate with you, or they will be punished by extension. So they don't dare do it. You're basically exiled from the system. So all these front-facing groups, they work with the CCP, like almost all of them, because it goes against their financial interest to not. And that's a frightening thing for the United States, because when they start working with the CCP, you basically have networks of tens of thousands, some claim to have hundreds of thousands of individuals, all of whom can be activated as spies if they're asked to do it, and a lot of them believe they don't have a choice. This is the biggest threat that America faces. This is a bigger threat than war. This is a bigger threat than Taiwan. This is a bigger threat than Russia. This is a bigger threat than, I think anything we're dealing with, because it's in our own backyards. It's already here. It's already happening. It's already infiltrating our government. It's already controlling, or at least influencing, most major American businesses and most major American media, already as we speak. It's already influencing our entertainment industry, Hollywood, major sports associations. It's already here. And we just let it happen. And the scary thing, like aside from universities and farmland and real estate and cyber theft and big tech and the energy industry and green tech, and I could go on and on about everything that we know the CCP is involved with, the drug trade, fentanyl, marijuana, everything, the cartels. We know they're involved in all of it. The scariest thing, in my opinion, is that they've also groomed people to apply for positions within the U.S. government. And they've been doing it for decades now. And you have deep, deep roots throughout our entire system. And the intent of it is to make our system no longer serve the American people, but instead serve the interests of the Chinese Communist Party. That's the big picture of what's happening right now. If you take all these little points that we all know are happening and you draw the big picture is they're trying to take over our country without invading us through military force. They're invading us through non-military means.
So Josh, from what you're saying is a lot of the Chinese and Chinese Americans, whether they're Chinese nationals or Chinese Americans that are in the system, they're under a lot of pressure to cooperate with the Chinese Communist Party. What can they do and how can people help them? How can you know that one of them is working for the Chinese Communist Party when they're in your company or not? Because if they are not, they're real good people and they have good morals and good work ethics.
So, I mean, and this is a challenge. I mean, look, like Epoch Times, we were started by Chinese dissidents. Like a lot of my friend group is Chinese dissidents, you know? It's the people I've been around for like, you know, I've been with Epoch Times since 2006, almost 20 years. I mean, we have a lot of, we've grown quite a bit from the early years. We have everybody now, but I know a lot of Chinese people who have had to sacrifice their well-being, sacrifice their safety, sacrifice their ability to ever go home and ever see their families again unless, you know, one day hopefully the Chinese Communist Party collapses, in order to stand up for what they believe in order to not be evil, frankly, in order to defy the Chinese Communist Party and stand up for what is right. Like the price of that is very high. And so the problem a lot of businesses have when they're hiring these people is that you have to remember the way the CCP works, right? The way the Chinese society works. If you're growing up in China, you've lived under a system where you've been taught fake history. I had a Chinese friend who was telling me, she said when she was growing up, there was a story she was really inspired by where like Communist Party soldiers were like crawling through the tall grass and the Japanese were throwing like torches and burning things. And one of them caught on fire and, you know, didn't want to expose his comrades and kept quiet and burned to death with the flames, you know. It was a fake story. It never happened. She only found out after she came to the U.S. that the entire story was fake. It never happened. I had a friend, you know, he lives in New York now, Chinese dissident, you know, he understands the CCP now, but he went to business school in China. He said that when they were in school, there was a question on a test about the Korean War, when the United States was, of course, fighting against the North Koreans. Of course, the Chinese Communist Party was sending soldiers down, so we were also fighting the Chinese Communist Party, right? One of the questions he had on his test in school was how this outdated Chinese airplane was able to shoot down an American jet. And the correct answer was because the Chinese pilot had the spirit of the Communist Party, right? Like, he laughs about it now because he's like, what kind of a question is that to ask like college kids? You know, it's crazy. But this is how they're indoctrinated. They've been raised to believe that the Chinese Communist Party is like everything. They have to do slogan classes, like you know, you have your different classes all throughout the day. You have an entire like hour-long class where for like an hour you have to sit there and repeat Communist Party slogans, like you're doing your Hail Marys religiously, but you're praising the Communist Party.
Wow.
They make you do this.
California is a very open-minded state. We have a lot of immigrants here, and immigrants provide a lot of value to this state and the country. For people that are in this situation, that they might have been brainwashed by the Chinese Communist Party, which most people were that in China, how can these business leaders or politicians that have them in their office help them? There
are quite a few movements trying to help them. I know within the Chinese community, there's the Tweedong movement, the Quit the Party movement. Epoch Times, you know, we published the 9 commentaries in the Communist Party, which exposes the real history of the Chinese Communist Party. That book is what helped spur on the Quit the Party movement. Because again, the problem is they don't know. They don't know how they've been lied to. They don't know what the Chinese Communist Party has done to the Chinese people. I will say it, I've said it before, the greatest persecutor of the Chinese people is the Chinese Communist Party. The Chinese Communist Party does not represent the Chinese people. It is the wolf that ate their parents. And it's the wolf that ate their parents, and they've grown up with it, and they think it's their parents. This is the thing that caused their suffering. This is the thing that destroyed their culture. This is the thing that devoured everything that China was and then replaced it with something horrid. And they've been told, hey, no new China without the Chinese Communist Party. That's not true. China, with the Chinese Communist Party, up until the reform and opening up, looked like every other third world communist country on earth. Again, it was where the Chinese military controlled everything. The PLA controlled everything. Dirt poor, communist country. The reform and opening up was just bringing in Western business. Western enterprise and Western investment created the new China. And the whole business development was not from the CCP. That was Deng Xiaoping lightening up the CCP's restrictions. The Chinese people were the ones who did that without the Chinese Communist Party. And they're not being told this. The entire world went from being mostly agrarian societies, early 1900s, to being, modern developed countries like we have now. South Korea went from being, very, again, like agrarian society to one of the most advanced modern civilizations on earth. Same with Taiwan. They didn't need communism. Look at North Korea, what communism is for them, China was like that before they opened up. It was only when they opened up to Western enterprise, Western technology, Western investment, that things did come up. And I will note that, prior to the CCP, it's not like Chinese people were told. China, before the CCP, was a very prosperous country. They were regarded, Chinese craftsmanship was so good that they didn't really want anything from the rest of the world other than gold, which is what spurred the Opium Wars, unfortunately. They only wanted gold because they didn't like, Western craftsmanship couldn't match what they had. It was one of the greatest countries on earth at the time. That was China before communism. And so there are many Chinese people in the United States, in other countries, who've been living in other countries and who know the real story of the CCP. And it's those people, I think, who are having the greatest impact of undoing the brainwashing. This is kind of the silent battle that many Westerners don't see. This silent battle of Chinese dissidents against the Chinese Communist Party, trying to, I would say, save the souls of the Chinese people because they see what's been done to them. The Tweedong movement, the Quit the Party movement, is an education program showing Chinese people, this is what the CCP did. This is how they lied to you. This is how they abused you. This is the famine. This is the murder. This is the this is the torture. This is what the CCP is. And what happens is the Chinese people see it and they say, what can I do about it? They say, quit the party, quit the CCP. And they have a whole program, the Tweedong movement, where they can go and they can condemn the CCP, they can quit the Young Pioneers, the Youth League, and the Chinese Communist Party, and hundreds of millions have quit. Hundreds of millions. Epoch Times, a lot of what we've done has been for the Chinese community also. I think we're probably one of the only major voices. There's a handful of other ones, but one of the few major voices, I should say, that really shows the real China, that really shows what's happening, that shows real news in China, and we've done it at great cost to ourselves because we get advertisers and the advertisers come to us and say, hey, the Chinese consulate's threatening us, saying that if we continue to advertise with you, that we're going to lose our business in China. Like, it's affected us. It's affected our well-being. It's led to people like me facing death threats from the CCP because I talk about it. Like, it comes at great cost to speak out and stand up. But there are a lot of us who've decided to do it. Shenyun Performing Arts, same exact thing, right? Their slogan is China before communism. They've been presenting what Chinese traditional culture was, what communism did to China, and how, I'd say, the underlying values of the Chinese culture were incredible, beautiful, wonderful things. And they also show the abuses of the CCP, how the essence of what was there is still there. and still salvageable, and how the CCP is strangling it and choking it, right? Beautiful performance, extremely successful performance, and constantly facing threats, bomb threats, theaters being shut down, their tires getting slashed, personal threats against their dancers, like death threats, rape threats against like students. The Taiwanese intelligence agencies actually traced some of the threats, and they traced it to China coming out of a company tied to Huawei. These threats against American this is a New York-based performing arts company facing these things. And then also triggering like criminal investigations. You have guys with ties to like Chinese spy networks spreading rumors, triggering investigations, and they're facing like just constant pressure, constant pressure, which by the way is tied in with one of the other CCP's warfare operations. It's called the three warfares: psychological warfare, media warfare, and legal warfare. It's called the three warfares. It's adopted into actual Communist Party military code. Like this is actually one of the main war programs of the People's Liberation Army. Three warfares. Psychological warfare is how you interpret information. It's the narrative that overlies. It's the narrative that represents the interpretation of an event, right? So, for example, the Chinese Communist Party is invading the South China Sea and taking it over. We can all observe this. What's the narrative? Well, the real narrative is that the CCP is invading the South China Sea and taking it over. The CCP's psychological warfare narrative is we have historical ownership of it and you've taken it from us and we're just taking it back, even though international courts have determined the CCP has no historical ownership over it. They even falsified maps to do it. Same thing when they target dissident groups. They'll, for example, falsify criminal complaints. They'll falsify stuff, trying to misrepresent someone's intent or whatever. Whenever the CCP wants to arrest a dissident or arrest someone who's escaped China, they'll say it's an anti-corruption campaign, and they'll cook the books on the Chinese side to, misrepresent things and go after people. They do it all the time. And unfortunately, a lot of the Western media is just, they
just cover what...
They're like dogs eating out of the CCP's hand, a lot of them. And I'm trying to be nice, but that's not what journalism is, where you just repeat everything that you're told.
Because they probably trust a government. We are kind of trained to trust government outlets, and if there's a PIO from a government agency saying this is what's happening, then you just report it. So that's what, if the Chinese Communist Party is saying that, they think that's accurate.
Well, let's put it this way. They're less discerning of the CCP than they are against the American government. They have no problem questioning everything the American government does. But they take everything the CCP says wholesale. Like, what's going on with that? It doesn't make sense to me. But back to the point of this, right? Back to the point of this. Psychological warfare, the narrative. Media warfare is the control of outlets of information, where they try to influence media. And remember, in America, more than 90% of our media is controlled by 5 corporations, most of which have business ties in China, right? So they can leverage that. And then legal warfare, lawfare, the use of legal attacks as a tool of war. And so they can basically create a false narrative, manipulate the media to promote the false narrative while concealing the truth, and then use that to trigger legal investigations, international, like lawsuits, whatever else. And it's very easy to frame someone. If you want to frame somebody, all you need is one person to make an accusation and 2 people to claim that they corroborate the accusation. And if you're the Chinese Communist Party and you have the United Front and you have tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people you can co-opt to say anything you want.
Can you give us some examples of this?
So one example of this, right? So Shenyang Performing Arts right now, they were facing one attack that's been exposed. In fact, it ties even here to LA, where you had a Chinese spy arrested, right? There was an incident where an individual was working with the Chinese Communist Party spy network, and they tried hiring an IRS agent to cancel the nonprofit status of Shenyang, right? Turns out the IRS agent was an undercover FBI agent. They got caught doing it. So you had a Chinese spy trying to manipulate the legal arms of the United States in order to have an impact on the organization they're trying to shut down. They were trying to manipulate the US government to do it. Another example, a lot of the media attacks against Shenyang Performing Arts have all kinds of weird ties to the CCP. You have New York Times doing just ongoing hit pieces against Shenyang. The key claims they have really come only from about 7 individuals. And the New York Times is concealing the fact that many of these individuals have direct ties to the Chinese Communist Party. For example, being connected to state-run Chinese dance theaters, doing travel trips back to China. One of the authors, her dad has some weird ties to one of the Chinese Communist Party front groups. Things like this. And then triggers this whole thing using people, all of whom seem to have some weird tie to the CCP, making false claims and then not citing the other side and not giving the full context of anything. Using what is just basically CCP narratives to target and tarnish the name of American Performing Arts Company. And then by doing that, triggering lawsuits, triggering legal investigations, and so on. It's exactly 3 warfares. The narrative, psychological warfare, the creation of false narratives, the manipulation of media warfare, and then lawfare, legal warfare, the triggering of legal investigations using these 2 systems. This is how Chinese warfare works under the Chinese Communist Party.
So Josh, do you have any thoughts for Californians and state representatives and government officials in California?
The problem America faces with everything we've talked about today is that we often try to compartmentalize the threat. So we look at Chinese cyber attacks and we say that's a big deal. We look at economic theft. We say that's a big deal. We look at the CCP's dominance of rare earth minerals and their monopolies on different industries. We say that's a big threat. We look, for example, the Belt and Road Initiative undermining American operations in other countries. That's a big threat. We look at their pressure of Hollywood. We look at their pressure of big tech. We look at their pressure on our financial industry. We look at them buying up farmland. We can acknowledge all of these are big threats. We can look at, for example, their involvement with the drug cartels and fentanyl, and even now doing marijuana grows in the United States. We can say that's a big threat. But we don't say all of this is tied in with some broader agenda. All of this, and we can observe all of this happening, we don't put it all together. And there's nothing really analyzing what that big picture is. The infiltration of our universities, which Trump himself has acknowledged, the manipulation of professors and bribery of American professors, which Trump has acknowledged, the influence campaigns against American businesses, the pressuring against them, the use of this financial interest to censor them, to censor films in Hollywood, to censor media and force them to abide by this so they get kicked out of China. The fact that we can't go to China and buy property like to buy it up here. We can observe every single individual piece and say that is a serious threat to our country. But nobody says, if this is a big threat, and this is a big threat, and this is a big threat, and the entire thing is a big threat, what is the entire picture? This is the greatest threat we face to the sovereignty of the United States. This is what is happening. We are in a war, and we're fighting it, and we don't know we're fighting it. We're in a war with the Chinese Communist Party, and if we don't take it seriously, we are going to lose our country. They're killing more Americans every single year with fentanyl and drugs than we lost in the entire Vietnam War. They're killing Americans on scale of a full-scale war every year, and we let it happen. If we don't take this seriously, we are going to lose our country. And the prospect of what that looks like is the China model, a tyrannical, atheistic, murderous regime will control basically the entire world, including our country, if we don't do something about it. Because they're already controlling many parts of our country. Everything I mentioned, these represent some form of control. We know about it. We're not doing enough about it. It's spreading. And because of financial interest, unfortunately, we let it happen. The scarier thing is them infiltrating government agencies, the spies who have gotten jobs within our own government. If we don't root that out, we will lose our country. This is the greatest threat the United States faces.
So Josh, we're facing a lot of challenges in California that we are covering on the show, but what you're saying is really scary. Do you have any specific call to actions for our audience?
Well, the first step needs to be awareness. The second step needs to be action. And so, the way a free society works, government reacts to what the citizens demand. If you want to have something done, the first step is to raise awareness. The second step is for people to become so aware that they say, we need to do something about it. Government action will follow that. Unfortunately, there are not enough voices exposing this right now. I think there are some, but we're among the few. Look, I'm just saying, if people really want to help get the word out, we need to make people aware of it. They can share this video, tell a friend or family member about it. The first step needs to be education. You really need to get it out there. The second step, and you could do this now also, call up your local representative. Tell them you're concerned about this. Tell them that you're worried about your country, that we need to do something about the Chinese Communist Party infiltrating our system, that we know about all these forms of influence and something needs to be done about it. Without demand for action, nothing will happen. Without an outcry saying, we can't let this happen to our country, nothing will be done. So I hope people can share this video. Honestly, I do think that'll help raise some awareness. I do hope people can call up their local representatives and tell them that they're worried about Chinese influence, Chinese Communist Party influence. Even that you're worried about threats against members of the Chinese community coming from China, that there are campaigns pressuring them, threatening them, targeting them, and that's happening on American soil. If you're in Hollywood, you don't want to have your film censored by China. If you're in the media, you don't want to have the Chinese Communist Party threatening to kick you out of your country if you tell the truth of what's happening in China. We should not be allowing any of this to happen. So we need to raise awareness. We need to raise awareness as the first step.
Well, hopefully, Josh, next time you come, you have better news for us so that we have made some progress on this. Joshua Phillip, investigative journalist and host of Crossroads, it was great to have you on California Insider.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Let us know what you think of this discussion with Josh. When we talk about the Chinese Communist Party, a lot of people mistake the Chinese Communist Party with the Chinese people. The two are completely different, and China is different from the Chinese Communist Party. The founders of our newspaper, Epoch Times, are all Chinese American, and they started the paper because of human rights issues in China. You can always email us at siamak@californiainsider.com or comment. We read all of your emails and comments. I'm Siamak Karami. This is California Insider, and we'll see you next time.